Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for coming tonight. The microphone isn't so you'll hear me. The microphone's for the video system. So I want to thank everyone for being here. It's a nice combination of people here, a lot of good thinkers in the crowd. With this group right here, we could make a lot of progress. I'm going to introduce Lisa, and Lisa's going to introduce Andy. But Lisa's going to be able to give you information about what is complete streets and kind of answer some of the questions. And I know, Dick, you had the question about how does this work with the comprehensive plan. And Lisa has been looking at the comprehensive plan and thinking about how we incorporate our comprehensive plan with a complete streets project. So, Lisa, I'll turn it over to you.
Okay. Well, thank you, Mayor Keefe. And I'm Lisa Schmidt-Ferrick-Miller. I work with the Chautauqua County Department of Health and Human Services. And we were recipients of a funding called the Community Transformation Grant. So we're working hard to kind of transform some of our local communities. And one of the focus of the grant is early prevention of chronic disease. So we're really working with a lot of early childhood activities with this project, but some community-wide projects too. And one of those community-wide projects that impacts the health of everybody from the very young to the very elderly are complete streets, and trying to make sure that we have communities that are safe, that are walkable, they're bikeable, where people feel comfortable out and about in the communities, but also safe for motorists too. And usually things that are good for pedestrians and cyclists are also things that are good for drivers. And Andy will be talking a little bit more about that. Andy is here from Peter J. Smith and Company. He has lived in Fredonia before, I understand, yes. Familiar with the area, currently living in Hamburg, so he has a wealth of experience and examples to share with us tonight. He's actually going to be addressing kind of the what are complete streets piece of this. So before we get started, I wanted to just very quickly, I'm giving you 5 words or less, not including your name, if you want to say your name, and just kind of what brought you here. So we'll, I think, start in the far back, if that's okay. And like I said, I just want to make this a quick name, briefly what brought you here. We're going to have a chance to talk a little more about issues and opportunities. We'll do a short visioning exercise later tonight. So.
My name is Dan Bigelow. I'm with the town of Hartford, and just wanted to see what's
going on.
Yeah,
okay, thank you.
Information, I guess.
Okay.
Mark Ruckman, village trustee, same thing. Would like to see what's happening.
Okay.
Sam Kaiser, bike lanes.
Mike Pucci, business development, bike lanes.
Great, thank you.
I'm Judy Lutz Woods. I care about my community.
Melissa Thompson, pretty much information.
Okay.
Brad Myers, the chief of police for the village of Fredonia. I'm just trying to stay in the know.
Phyllis Jones, village trustee, Fredonia. Same thing.
Thanks for coming.
Peter Alexandrovich. I'm a business owner in the village of Fredonia and a Hamburg sort of residence, so I've been through this with the village of Hamburg.
I'm Greg Fox, I'm a reporter.
Thanks for coming, Greg.
I'm Michael Barris. I'm interested in walking.
Okay.
And I'm Jack Croxton, longtime resident of the village of Fredonia, also representing my wife Mary, who's out of town, and I have to take good notes for her.
And I think you won a Bike to Work Week prize a while back. We did a Bike to Work Week. I remember your name.
I'm Janet Keefe, and my husband brought me here.
I'm Ralph Blasting. I just moved into the village in July. I work at the college, and Steve sent me an email, so I showed up.
Great, thank you.
Same here, Carmen Gilman. I love the village, and if it can improve, I came to see how.
Great.
Dick Gilman. I'm retired from the college, and I came because Keith said you might come and be interested.
Mike Jabat, just interested in learning more about complete streets.
Okay.
Mitch Cummings, a resident of the village and driver of large commercial vehicles, a bicyclist and a pedestrian, and a proponent of complete streets. And just drove down Central Avenue here in the dark, no lines whatsoever, and almost got whacked because of it.
Yeah.
Problem in this village.
Okay. Thank you.
Vicki Kaiser, Fredonia resident, interested in a low-energy lifestyle and resiliency measures, including walkable, bikeable village.
Great. Okay, it's good to hear that kind of balance of environmental interest, personal, physical, betterment of the community, and business. Those things we'll be addressing all of those. So thank you all. For the folks that just came in, we just did real quick introductions about who you are and what brought you here. Do you want to?
Okay, I'm Priscilla Titus, dog walker. Enjoy going to the village on foot for events and stuff. I have concerns about, I think bicyclists a lot of times use the sidewalk just because it's dangerous to be on the street because drivers tend to be, not all drivers are aware of the challenges bicyclists face, especially in the winter.
Yep. We'll be getting to some of those things. I forgot to tell you we gave everybody a 5-word limit.
Okay.
So.
My name's John Titus, and I walk and ride my bicycle around and walk the doggies and stuff.
Great. Okay. Thank you all very much for coming. I'm going to let Andy go ahead and but before that, we're going to talk a little bit about what are complete streets with his presentation. We have kind of a short, I call it a visioning exercise, but it's an opportunity for probably for Andy and for myself to understand a little bit better about kind of I call it the good, bad, and the ugly, but we'll talk a little bit about what's good, what some of the issues and concerns are as well. We'll try to do that in just a quick brainstorming type of a format, and then talk about some next steps. So thank you. What's that? Oh, I'm so sorry. We're fortunate to have 2 interns here with SUNY Fredonia. Justin Knoll is here, and this is Justin, and Brendan O'Connor is joining us as well. Justin will have to step out to make it to his work shift tonight, but they're working with us on these projects as well, so it's good to have that involvement too. Okay, thank you.
All right, what I will do then is just briefly go over, try to give you a sense of what complete streets are, can be, but first, I work with Peter J. Smith and Company, and we're landscape architects, urban planners, economic planners. We deal with just the public sector. That's our purview. We have a lot of experience across Canada and the U.S. Small company, but many of us have been working for the company for a long time, and it's been in business for over 25 years, and we've got a lot of accolades from professional organizations for our work. So, complete streets. It revolves around the access and mobility for everyone. Everyone's got to share. It's not one vehicle taking the whole bunch of the roadway, so to speak, or not all pedestrians, not all bikers. It's everyone taking turns. And so it involves a lot of issues: economics, traffic calming, livable communities, health, safety, as well as it deals with bicycles, automobiles, pedestrians, transit as well. And this came about because in August of 2011, the governor signed a bill, and it took effect last year in February. And what this does is it states that any work that the DOT does or municipalities, they have to complete this design and planning with complete streets in mind. So they have to include things that will make the streets more amenable to walkers, bikers, as well as vehicles. And so this is more of a formal definition of it, but in general, it's just that it includes all users. So it's a street that includes all users without weighting it more toward one or the other. So that's just a general, as well as it's economically friendly, it's aesthetically pleasing, it's just a good street to be on. So this is just a cross-section showing a street, and it deals with that whole streetscape. From the buildings, the building facades, the sidewalk, the street itself, crosswalks, everything in between. So they are all incorporated into what this complete street idea is. So just some elements of it. Bump outs up at top left, that's showing that. You can read what they are. But just it's more items that make the street safer, make it easier to use, make it more enjoyable to use. It's pretty much just taking everyone's, so to speak, needs and putting them in the street in kind of a balanced format so that vehicles can get through easily, pedestrians can get through along streets as well as across streets, bikers can still use the street, as well as mass transit. And if you've got any questions with the slides, feel free to break in. I just want to go over 3 projects that we've done that deal in some part with complete streets. This one was in Ohio, and we helped them. It was a long corridor, and we were helping them better define their street, among other things. And so this is just some of the graphics that we came up with to visually get the idea across. So that one intersection, we suggested the possibility of a roundabout, putting that. It makes traffic flow much better. It helps pedestrians cross a little easier because they've got more defined spaces to do it in, as well as some safety in the mid-street. We talked about different ways of doing streets depending on where they are, and also looked at the cross-section of the street, how to better define the streetscape itself. This was also in Ohio. This was part of a wayfinding system as well. And again, we looked at better ways for developing the street itself, potentially having one solid material across the whole street and having it more defined by what's in it rather than by curbs and other things. So it makes it easier for handicapped accessible people to flow across the street. It makes it easier for people to use the street, for businesses to utilize the street, as well as the wayfinding aspect of it, a wayfinding signage mock-up over there. This one was Glens Falls in New York. Again, we did a photo simulation showing possibilities, taking one of their existing streets and what could be done when we apply the principles of complete streets. And again, a cross-section showing how it could be divided up, getting amenities in there as well as allowing traffic still to flow through. And then just a plan showing what that would look like. And so the question is, why do we do complete streets? You want to do them because it makes life much more better. Not the way, it's a better quality of life, I should say. Traffic can move better if you do it right. Pedestrians feel safer, more comfortable. It's more aesthetic environment to be in. It's safer. And what you need to do, though, is it needs to be catered, so to speak, designed around where it's being done. So if it's in a big city, it's going to be different principles, different types of things you're doing rather than if it's out in the country. So it's very site sensitive, so to speak. And so just looking at how this comes about, and Lisa can jump in on this as well. It starts with planning and policies that the municipality can enact, get involved with, so that they start to define what it is they want, how they want their street to look, so that when then businesses come in, they have a blueprint. They say, okay, I know what I'm doing. This is easy, instead of having to wonder, okay, can we do this, can we do this? It's all straightforward out there. Typically, you look at a circulation hierarchy, and that's what that bottom left graphic shows, is we looked at the vehicular traffic as well as pedestrian, as well as any other systems, circulatory systems, such as greenways or any green systems, any where parking is, looking at that, any bike lanes or trails, making sure that they also are incorporated into this whole system. And this bottom right graphic is just a project we're still working on in Miami, where they're looking at taking a few blocks of the right downtown Miami and creating more of a complete street, so to speak, and making it more enjoyable to be there and trying to get economic development then to come in because more people are going to be wanting to be there and be around. So there's a lot that can be done with the complete streets. It's not just for the street, it's for the whole community. And then from that, you can develop design guidelines, which is what I showed you in these graphics, to help people understand what it could look like and what it visually would be like to be in the space. And so you can design the actual right-of-way in terms of that, and also in terms of the streetscape, any standardized curb cuts or crosswalks, and again, that's something that municipality can develop, so they have it, all right, this is what we want, this is how we're going to implement it, to make a much more pleasing, useful, safe street environment. And I think that was it. That's all I have.
That was a nutshell. Thank
Yep.
you. Do you have questions for Andy?
Yes.
Go ahead.
You can go, on the end.
I would always defer to Carmen and her wisdom. Regarding circulation hierarchy, how is that determined, since a lot of us would bike or walk more if it were safer, better lit, et cetera? So how do you arrive at that hierarchy without a lot of jostling?
It depends on the actual community in terms of what the traffic flow is, what's around it, where people are coming to and from. You have to look at each site separately. And so it's just balancing in terms of trying to get the traffic through there, but still allowing pedestrians to feel safe and to get to where they want to be, as well as keeping the transit moving. So there's no set answer. It's always, you look at what's there and then how can we balance it.
So do you poll the community?
Well,
I mean, because current transit doesn't necessarily reflect how people would maximize their use of it.
right. And the balance of that is I think, if I'm understanding what Andy's saying, is really kind of looking at what the existing infrastructure and use is, and also looking possibly at some of the potential use. It's been pretty clear with communities across the country with complete streets and trails that if you build it, they will come. I mean, it tends to be, a case where if people have places where they feel safe to walk or to bicycle, they're more likely to walk and bicycle. And there's no doubt in my mind that if we got a bike lane on Central Avenue, we would see more people biking, whether it's because they feel like they have a space to do it, whether it gets it in their head like, oh, hey, I could be, riding my bike here, there's a bike lane here. For whatever the reason and kind of the psychology behind it, and just I think it's the fact that people feel like they're safer, that that's a legitimate travel mode. So, I think it is looking at the existing traffic patterns of all users, but then also some of the potential of that too.
And the circulation is looking at what are the destinations, where are people going? Because you don't want to just set up one street that has a bike lane and it ends at nowhere, and then people won't be as likely to use it. You want to set up, okay, there's a large park at the end, or the lake, or a business district, that places where people will go, as well as, again, transit stops, that you want to make sure that you're connecting all these dots and not just, so to speak, trying to fix one street without considering everything else.
I didn't see any parked cars. Is that how you get space on an existing street to get bicycle lanes?
That is one way, by removing parking and potentially putting it in behind, but there are other ways, by what they call road diet, narrowing the lanes slightly, pinching each one a little bit to get something else. You can look at changing where the parking is and doing bump outs so that it's at the intersections or mid-block, you can make it easier for people to cross because you've shortened the road width, so to speak. There are many different ways of doing it. It depends on, again, whether do you need a lot of parking? Is it because there's a theater there and you need that parking right there, or is it accessible from the back and you can, the community can manage it in the back? It all depends on what you have and then how you can manage it.
Yes, Jack?
As a social scientist, I'm always kind of interested in data Do you do any kind of like pre-post? I mean, so do you go out and collect data on people's needs and what they're looking for? And then once you do your work, do you do any kind of like post-analysis, a survey or some kind to find out if it's having the desired impact?
We don't typically do a post survey, but we do a lot of pre. We look at demographics in terms of what is the population, what businesses are there, what are the trends coming up all around. We talk with the transportation departments and find out what's going on with the road system, what is the vehicle numbers, where is the traffic flow. We do on occasion surveys of people, if that's what the client wants, and to find out and have focus groups and other visioning sessions to find out what it is that people need, where they're from where they're coming, where they want to go, what they want it to look like. So I don't know if that answered your question, but yes, there is a lot of background information that you have to find because each place is different. There's no cookie cutter that you can just plop it down and say, oh yeah, it'll work. It's all different.
The related question is how does this relate to the village comprehensive plan? Many of these sorts of activities were undertaken over the last 7 years.
Mhm.
So
I know the mayor said that I had reviewed the comprehensive plan, and I have to
Yeah.
admit I haven't reviewed it yet. I just got it in the mail a couple of days
some
ago.
of us attended
But
all of the meetings.
that'll be, well, and that's very valuable input to have. So I am very interested in looking at that and then, and seeing kind of where, where these things all start to mesh, whether it's design, the community's vision for the design, and the function of the village center, and just in the overall kind of transportation planning piece of that comprehensive plan and all of those things. So, yeah.
I get the emails from Smart Growth America,
Mm-hmm.
and yesterday I got one, and they were talking about a town or a village in Indiana that just passed a complete streets ordinance.
Mm-hmm.
So are you familiar with complete street ordinances, and what do those mean?
That's kind of what brings me here, actually. Complete streets ordinances are, it's a commitment by the community. And Jamestown, New York is the closest one here that has one, and we worked with Jamestown to get that in place. But a complete streets ordinance commits the community to looking at transportation projects as opportunities to improve traffic flow and to improve usability for everybody. So to make sure that we are doing the kinds of design things that Andy talked about, where it's feasible, where it makes sense. It's a requirement to consider that, but in complete streets ordinances, there's almost never a requirement to implement certain standards. I mean, there's always, we look at this in the design phase. Where does it make sense for us? If we can do it, and we can do it, we have the funding to do it, we're going to do it, because that's when those road projects are being undertaken, that's the time to do it. We're not ever suggesting that we go back and retrofit roads that have already been completed. I mean, there may be some aesthetic kind of things, or some very simple things that we can do around that, but in terms of actually the type of work that we're doing, on the street in the right-of-way, I can give you an example of what just happened in Jamestown that might be helpful. Jamestown passed a complete streets ordinance. Like most communities in the county, there's just not been a lot of new roads going in anywhere, so we haven't had that opportunity. And there really hasn't been a lot of rebuilding kind of projects going on either. Except the State Department of Transportation surprised Jamestown with a project to do what they call a mill and overlay. So they grind down the road and then put fresh asphalt on it, and it's, it's nice. Well, we got wind of that, and the Jamestown Department of Public Works did as well. And we got everybody together, the DPW folks, the State Department of Transportation folks, and some bicycle and pedestrian folks, and said, hey, here's an opportunity, because the stretch of roadway was in poor condition in terms of a lot of potholes and things like that, but adding to the problems, and this is similar to your Central Avenue here, it was too wide to be one lane, but really technically wasn't two. Technically it's one lane with a parking lane. So our complete streets treatment for that road was simple and inexpensive, and it was just to have the DOT, when they put the asphalt back and put the striping back in the middle of the road, was just to have them very simply add parking striping. So they just marked where the parking lane was, and you wouldn't believe the difference. It gives the motorist much more comfortable, not that fear of being sideswiped because there's somebody thinking it's a 2-lane trying to pass them on the right. I don't know if that has ever happened to you on Central Avenue, but I hear stories, so I imagine it kind of comes close. It's given the cyclist a place to know where they should be riding. It gives pedestrians a shorter crossing distance. A lot of dog walkers. It's a neighborhood on 3rd Street in Jamestown, if any of you are familiar with that. Gives people an opportunity to get out and only have to cross 2 lanes of traffic before they're back in what would be the parking lane kind of zone there. So that's an example of just a very simple treatment that didn't cost the city of Jamestown anything and cost the State Department of Transportation very little. And that's exactly kind of how this is supposed to work. So that's what an ordinance, typically will do. And we can share samples of some complete streets ordinances. And the reason we talk about ordinances and policies is that we can sit here and be committed to a community that accommodates all of our users. But when administrations change, when your highway superintendent changes, that commitment may or may not be there in the future. And this is just a way to ensure that the community's vision continues along those lines. The other piece of that, and I'm jumping ahead of myself a little bit, and Andy, feel free to jump in on this, is that we're really working to get communities ready for when there are transportation projects. So I think if either, Peter, if either you could talk about Hamburg or Andy in just a minute, a little bit about the Hamburg project. But this is a case where when the Department of Transportation comes in to do a project, that what they have told us, they want to do some of these complete streets type of projects. The community has to be ready. So the community has to know that the project's coming, which is one thing, but the community also has to know what they want from those projects. And having a complete streets ordinance along with your comprehensive plan, assuming that's adopted, all of those things, the visioning kind of things that we're doing this evening, will all help to let DOT know that yes, we have put some time and effort. This is our community's vision, and we're not going to accept that you're just going to repave it exactly the way it was. We expect a little bit more than that, and the state DOT is willing to do that, but they need to know what that is. So that's why I'm being charged with encouraging communities to adopt complete streets ordinances, and one of the things that we're just working toward here with the village. So does that answer? Yes, he left. He was either really satisfied or really dissatisfied with that answer. Any other questions or comments?
Is it mainly the central streets that you do this, or do you do side streets?
Well, most of the side streets are, depending, I'm going to say most of the side streets in the community, I would already say that they're complete streets. Many of them have sidewalks. Now, I know the sidewalks are sometimes get to be in disrepair. It's just the nature of our environment here and the age of our infrastructure. But they're low traffic speed for the most part, low traffic volume. Our neighborhood streets typically don't have a lot of high-speed traffic going through them. So people feel fairly safe, I would imagine, bicycling on them. And you also have issues of right-of-way, that you don't always have enough room to do all of the kinds of things that you're doing. It wouldn't make sense. That's where Andy's talking about that balance of users and needs and costs and all of those things. And I think you need to strike that balance. You might have a residential road that a lot of people are using as a cut-through for some reason. That might be a road to look at or a street to look at. But most of our roads, no. I mean, that's why when we're talking with communities, we're saying we're not talking about every single street, certainly, because a lot of your streets are already in fine shape, even some of your main streets here. So.
I would like to point out Chestnut as something that should be, looked at. Chestnut, Seymour, some of these streets where the sidewalks don't exist, there is a lot of foot traffic, a lot of bicycle traffic, and no place for it to be. Issues on the side of the road, some major concerns.
Yeah.
Yes. We have concerns with people walking in the streets when the sidewalks are available, because the sidewalks are so irregular and dangerous.
So are you asking?
Well, it's an issue that needs to be considered.
Okay.
The argument is if the sidewalks were maintained, and specifically if they were snow plowed, then the people wouldn't be walking in the streets, and citizens wouldn't be writing letters of complaint to the newspapers.
Okay, that, one of the things, we haven't talked about kind of the 5 E's. Are you familiar with the 5 E's? You want me to hit them?
You
I'll
can
hit
hit
them,
'em.
okay. When we're talking, this came about through the Safe Routes to School program, but it's a good way to look, I think, at these kind of projects in a community. And they develop what they call the 5 E's, and that is engineering, which is exactly the kind of examples that Andy was showing you. It's evaluation, the kind of things, Jack, that you spoke to, of doing some kind of that pre and post sort of evaluation, assessment sort of activity. So engineering, evaluation, education, which is doing educational programming, media, so using social media, using other kinds of media, raising awareness of issues, encouraging people to get off the sidewalk, working with law enforcement, for example. How can you use your law enforcement time to encourage people to do the right thing that way? And encouragement activities, which are incentive kind of things for people that might be working with SUNY to do some sort of incentive for more bicycle riding, for example, than for car parking. And let's see, evaluation. I always forget one of them. Engineering, evaluation, education, encouragement. Darn it. It'll come to me. I use some of that. But anyway, it's kind of provides that framework. So, and really we look at it like you want to make some of these changes, and then you want to promote those changes, and we want communities to promote those changes. We want to, have a complete streets. If we get a complete streets ordinance in place, we would like to look for something like what happened in Jamestown and say, hey, look, it happened, it worked, and kind of promote that way so people are understanding that. And my experience has been that regardless of what kind of condition the sidewalks are in, you will always have somebody walking in the street, the same way you'll always have somebody riding their bike on the sidewalk, even though there's a bike lane, or riding their bike the wrong way, even though, you'll have some of that, but yes, you want to minimize that.
So has it worked in Jamestown?
That project was an example of what the Complete Streets Ordinance working the way it should.
But has it been successful in
That-
the eyes of Jamestownites?
Yes, yes, it has. They've gotten a good feedback so far. There's actually going to be a letter to the editor, I think, going in. But on social media, the Jamestown Renaissance Corporation, which kind of functions like a downtown development sort of corporation, has had a lot of positive feedback. We've talked to business owners that are right near that stretch of roadway, and they're thrilled with it. They said it looks better, it feels more comfortable to people, and they're very happy with it.
Is there a bike lane on 3rd Street now?
There is not. We would like to see a bike lane there, but the project came about so quickly, it would have required some engineering work. So this is kind of an example of the best, given the time frame that we had to work with. Like Andy mentioned, it would go nowhere. We'd like to, if we're going to put a bike lane in, we want to see it be part of starting to build a connected network. So we need to have that planning a little further along. And Jamestown does have a bike pedestrian plan in a draft form right now.
Do we?
Have a bike ped plan?
Now, it might be part of the comprehensive plan.
That's what I was wondering, that plan.
But the comprehensive plan still needs to be adopted. So we're still in that stage with the comprehensive plan. And, I'm looking at, it looks like we're on the 2nd floor, but actually you're on the ground floor right now of this type of a project. And really, what you would envision for your village is what we'd like to see. And how do we incorporate it? And how are we ready? When the funds come in, are we ready to start a project? Do we have a project that says, this is what we want to do? If they're going to do, work on Route 20, are we ready to say, this is what we'd like to have happen? If there's some money that comes in to do work on Central Avenue, and in fact, the county's already offered to paint lines down the sides, part of bike lanes. Central Avenue is wide. Bike lanes on Central Avenue makes all the sense in the world. So, part of what we're trying to do right here is get the ideas working and then figure out how we're going to be prepared when opportunity knocks.
How much of those concepts already exist in the comprehensive plan?
I'm not sure.
I mean, it sounds like we're starting to recreate a round wheel from a square block when there's a round wheel already out there.
Well, Michael, you were involved in the comprehensive plan in the community involvement basis of that, is that correct? in some of those discussions?
Yeah,
It was, how much work was done on the transportation piece of that, on bicycle pedestrian activity?
the activity went on for 6 years before the village board passed it. You know, there were meetings throughout.
But I guess I'm asking
Yeah.
how many of those meetings focused on, specifically on bicycle, pedestrian, streetscape kind of issues?
I think all of them focused on streetscape. I don't
Okay.
recall ever having heard any mention of bicycles.
Okay.
So,
So I think to answer your question, it's not, we're not so much reinventing some work that's already been done, hopefully updating some of it and getting ready to move forward.
And that's historically, streets have been planned for vehicles for the most part, and bicycles are just, well, ad hoc after the fact. And that's
planned for horses, actually.
way back, yes. But what Complete Streets is trying to get at is you need to plan for everything all at once. So the bicycles as well as the people as well as the vehicles. And that all those systems overlay all at once and not just plan for in the recent past as just for getting vehicles from here to there.
And I think what what funders are looking for is not necessarily and they like to see a very well developed plan. What we're encouraging our communities to do is at a minimum, get the Complete Streets ordinance in place. I think that's important. It shows that commitment. And then secondly, to even if it's a very rudimentary, here are 5 projects that we think would make our community better or make our streets better for all users. And they might be bicycle pedestrian specific, they might be more around businesses and, streetscape accommodating business activity, whatever it might be, but here are 5 transportation related projects, and here are our priorities, so that somebody can see, a funder can see where that project that you're proposing fits into your plan and fits into how it's going to impact your community. So I don't think it has to be a long, expensive, or drawn-out process. It might just be adopt the comprehensive plan. It sounds to me like there's probably some good stuff in there, and then this might be a short addendum to a comprehensive plan, and that's something that, you can work on.
So Steve, when would this comprehensive plan likely be adopted? How far along is it in the process?
Well, I think it was, it hasn't been brought up under my administration yet. The previous administration had passed, had put it together and everything like that. I remember given information that was elicited through the emails and phone calls and everything else. Right now it's collecting dust. And I'd like to see it passed, read through, see if it needs any modifications. I know Phyllis is very interested in getting it done. Mark's interested in getting it done. So I think the first process is to get the comprehensive plan under control. But I think what this does right here, you were talking about the layer system. I would see this as a transparent layer that goes over it, that puts bikes, pedestrians, and other things that would fit in with that comprehensive plan, all working together and showing that we are ready for the next step.
But the comprehensive plan may already have that in it. Nobody seems to know.
You
Right?
know, it does exist, it just hasn't been approved yet. But I know that it doesn't have a complete streets ordinance in it. And
But
what we're looking-
that's just nomenclature. I mean, the ideas may be there.
Right.
The concepts may be already fairly well thought out.
Mm-hmm.
And what does the complete streets, what is it, a complete streets?
An ordinance?
Ordinance.
Mhm.
I mean, an ordinance sounds kind of heavy to me.
Yeah.
There's an ordinance enforcer someplace looking over my shoulder. But the guts of the stuff may already be there, and to say we have a complete streets ordinance may mean nothing more than we have figured it out in the
And your comprehensive plan, yep.
And I would hope so. I would hope that in the comprehensive plan, I know that there was historical preservation in the comprehensive plan. I know that there was a section of the village that was going to be historically kept in place. I know that there were concerns over the length of time that a red light would stay red and how long it would be green and how many people could cross the street and how many cars could pass through. I I know those were some of the issues for our comprehensive plan. I don't think pedestrian safety, you know, I haven't read it for a long time, but I don't think pedestrian safety at the level that we need to address it in this community was addressed at all. If you look at, you know, the streets that just, you know, when they redid Main Street, you know, you've got 3 lanes there for people to try to cross. And it is, you're taking your life at your own risk trying to cross. How many crossings do you have? If you look at, you know, you've got Temple and Main, Temple and Main crossing, you've got one at Eagle, and the next one is Newton. So, I mean, in between those sections, how do you get across that street? We just put a crosswalk up at the college. Now, I would assume that that would have been a part of a comprehensive plan to get students from one side of the street to the other side of the street, but it hadn't been addressed. I know that recently new signage was put up to slow down traffic for the crosswalk over Batty Johns. I know that a crosswalk was just put in at the high school, and yet your traffic is 40 miles an hour at a crosswalk. You have 40 miles an hour going into 3 lanes going in every direction, and it's a crazy situation there. These are the types of things we need to address. Now, I know that when you look at a roundabout, everybody says a roundabout, that's kind of obsolete, you know, unless you're in Britain or New England. A roundabout reduces the number of contact areas for an accident. And I think you'd agree with this, right, Pete? That when Hamburg looked at a roundabout in the village, the reason for the roundabout is to slow traffic, but keep it moving at all times. It reduces the number of contact places for an accident. It gives pedestrians a better success rate of crossing. You talk about your data. I'm sure there's data that would tell you what the effects of a roundabout was in different cities. Now, I'm not suggesting that we put a roundabout in. You know, I'm not opposed to it. I'm not, you know, saying that that's what we should do. I'm just saying it's a possibility. But I guarantee you that wasn't covered in the comprehensive plan. And if there's ideas that we come up with this, you know, complete streets, it would go along with the comprehensive plan. But I think that I agree with you that the comprehensive plan should be the guiding light at this point.
Well, at least a starting point.
Right, right.
Question?
Yeah, I have 2 questions. One, where can we look at this comprehensive plan? Can I come down here tomorrow and get a copy of it? I mean, or is it online, or? That would be my first question. And second, is this the time for comments and input, or?
Yeah, we'd like to move along.
Because I have a very strong, as a pedestrian.
Okay.
As I'm sure the police know, I know the mayor knows. I walk all the time, and I walk with my grandchildren, and I can't tell you, I mean, the danger, we're talking danger. We already had a college student killed. Crossing, I mean, you know, in downtown. I mean, that shouldn't have happened. I mean, no one should be going that fast that would, you know, in my opinion. I can't tell you how many times that I make my grandchildren wait until a walk sign comes up, and we still have almost been killed. And I have reported it. I mean, the police know, and they understand, but I mean, so when we're doing this plan, and I happen to live, it's a residential street as far as I'm concerned, because I live there, but it is a very, very fast, because it's Temple, and that goes to the college. And I can't tell you how many times that I've almost been hit just pulling out of my driveway, and someone wants to pass me on the right-hand side, because he's, you know, I don't know.
I think
they're in a hurry. So I mean, these are really big issues, and they're not issues of just making it more beautiful, which I like, and I like if they be more for business. We're talking about literal safety. People going to get, you know, killed and very seriously injured.
And safety really is a big part of complete streets and traffic calming. And a lot of the design work, while it looks like aesthetics, a lot of that actually has a traffic calming function as well, so it helps to slow traffic down through communities. And, you know, when we kind of, I mean, we all want to get someplace fast, but we also, we want everybody else to drive slow in our community. So, you know, it's understanding that we need to keep cars moving along, but at a reasonable speed and in the safest way for our pedestrians. I think what I would like to do, I have one comment, and then I'd like to open up a short visioning activity, and that was just in regards to upcoming kind of opportunities. I was at a meeting today where the state DOT let us know that there will be transportation monies, it's now called transportation alternatives, monies available for communities to apply for projects. That funding will be made available late next year. So next, probably November, December, they'll be releasing what the funding guidelines look like, how much is available, what kind of projects are eligible, that sort of thing. So it's a, we know that there will be opportunities coming up for applying for some of these kind of projects. What I'd like to do, Brendan's going to help us out quickly, is I'd like to just get some comments and some input, and I would like to hear something that's good, because we really want to get a complete picture. So something that's good about the community in terms of walkability, bikeability, traffic flow, whatever, and something that you have an issue or a concern with. So, and just like I said, just to try to move through that fairly quickly without a lot of description. So, who would like to open with something good?
I think the fact that the streets are narrow
Okay.
makes the pedestrian safety much greater
Okay.
than it is in many communities.
Mm-hmm. It's a benefit of older communities. Okay. Something that you see an issue with?
I'm concerned about plowing of sidewalks.
Okay.
I was just gonna say, the good part is it's really wonderful to walk, that you can walk places in the parks in downtown Fredonia. I mean, I think that it's fabulous. The danger, I mean, it's a very strong danger, and especially for me, it's particularly crossing Central Avenue.
Okay.
Coming from Temple. And people not following the signs. I mean, they're drivers, not stopping. I mean, it's turn on red. They don't even, it's supposed to be stop and look and then turn.
Okay.
And I came here from New Hampshire, and I can tell you one thing. In downtown Concord, I could probably walk in front of a car, and that car would slam their brakes, because they know that pedestrians have the right of way.
Yeah, that's not a unique problem. I can tell you from other places in Chautauqua County, that's not unique to Fredonia, that we seem to have a motorist, and Brandon's catching that. So a good and a issue.
Positive that I see especially on Route 20, on the main street coming down, it is handicap accessible as far as, because I have a handicapped child that I have pushed in a wheelchair.
Mhm.
And because of when they came through a while back and redid the Route 20, they did make it so I can get down, there's no curves. Basically, when you get off onto the side street, yes, I have issues.
Okay.
But the basic, to be able to bring her down into the parks, so that's a positive thing.
Okay.
That way.
Okay.
I agree. I think on even some of the smaller street, now I live on Leverett, and it's a narrow street, but it's a connecting street, and for me, it's a lot, the traffic flow is very fast, and there is no bicycle lanes, and it's, so I think there are still a lot of other streets within the village, other than the main thoroughways, that need to be addressed.
I'd like to go for about 3 or 4 more minutes, if you'd like to.
I really do think the aesthetics, I think we have a beautiful village. I think that's a plus. The concern I have sometimes is the speed of traffic. I know what coming into 20 where Eagle Street, where the light is, numerous times I've seen cars go through the red light coming into the village, and that's very, and a pedestrian is trying to cross. They're just trying, I guess, to beat the light.
Yeah. Okay.
Being new into town, I think a real positive is it's a very compact village. You can get from Central Avenue down to Temple to the town square and into the main business district pretty quickly. But the disadvantage is there's not a real clear way to do it.
Okay.
Another advantage is a lot of people like to bike. There's an incredible number of people like to walk and bike in this town.
Mm-hmm.
And you've got the real potential to get from one place to the other very easily. So it's a huge potential, but it's not clear how to do it. If you're trying to get from one place to the other and down to Temple and around in the business district and back, there's no single smooth bike or pedestrian path to do that.
Okay, did you get that? Okay, good. Anything else?
This is another maybe negative or something, but not all the places have sidewalks. Last year when the kids were at Wheelock and I'd walk from my house, I had to walk on people's yard and then a sidewalk would appear. You know what I mean? And that doesn't make sense.
What road is that, Chestnut?
Yeah. There might be others, but I just know on Chestnut that happens.
Yep.
People walking and all of a sudden,
Gardner,
Newton
that's a problem.
is like that.
Newton also?
And the way the ordinance works for sidewalks, the sidewalk is the responsibility of the landowner. And we do give reimbursements at this point to help people put sidewalks in. The ordinance is set up in such a way that if there's a sidewalk here and a sidewalk here, and you live in between, you must build a sidewalk. However, if there's two properties without a sidewalk, you're not mandated to put a sidewalk in. If there's three, and that's the problem. So, it creates a situation for us that we don't have a solution for. And, I know Mike's talking about the sidewalks. We do try to plow the sidewalks, but there again, the property owner is responsible for the snow on their sidewalks. So that, it should be shoveled, but we do plow the majority of them. And I know Mike's out early, so he might beat the plows.
There's some neat encouragement things that communities have done around snow removal.
just on that, I just have a question, and I guess this would be an issue. If the homeowner is responsible, but the homeowner is old or disabled, how can they do it?
Good question.
Well, that's where, in communities where you, in particular, where you have a lot of absentee landlords is an issue too, with who removes the snow from the sidewalk. In communities that enforce the snow plowing ordinance, whatever that might be, or snow clearing ordinance, usually people just determine either you get a neighbor to help, you pay somebody to do it because that's the alternative to getting ticketed or fined. So that, anybody, you would hopefully say a neighbor would help out a neighbor in that case, somebody who's old or unable or whatever.
College kids.
Like start a whole nother economy.
Well, I think most people assume that the village plows the sidewalks anyway. I mean, if you just stop plowing, then what would happen? They'd go out and shovel them, or you'd need snowshoes. But the fact that the village little buzzer car there comes along and plows them, really not very well, because after they plow it, it falls back in and it turns to slush and ice, and they're really bad in the middle of the winter. But it's Western New York. It's not Miami.
Hit yak tracks.
Yeah, get tracks.
And you can walk on them.
And then there's the liability of plowing. When we plow, we take on liability. Somebody slips, we just plowed, freezes over, there's ice, somebody slips on that ice.
It's your fault?
Well, we assume a portion of the blame. Who's got the deepest pockets? The village, so, who's gonna be sued? The village?
But that means if the sidewalk is not shoveled and somebody slips and falls, it's on the homeowner.
Right.
Do most homeowners know that? Do you think?
I would think they would.
I bet they don't. I bet
Sound-
they think it's the village's responsibility.
Sounds like some good opportunities for educational and awareness sort of activities.
One of your E's.
Yeah, we'll add that to the E's. So we're at 7 o'clock now. What I'd like to do is, if there's any, we'll be here for a few minutes to chat if you'd like to. But I'd like to talk a little bit about next steps and what you would like to see maybe as some next steps for, for kind of moving some of your concerns and issues forward. I might have some ideas, but I'd like to hear what your ideas are.
Dust off the comprehensive plan.
Yeah.
It sounds like to me like that would be an excellent idea.
I know that if money comes available, you have to be, the term shovel-ready came up a few years ago with the stimulus, and there were so many people who just didn't get anything because they weren't ready.
Yeah. I'll give you a couple of examples of shovel-ready, and one was the village of, or the city of Olean has been doing a lot of work around their main street, the same type of things that we've been talking about here on a slightly larger scale. And they were just awarded $6.5 million in Tiger, what's called Tiger funding, to start to implement that project. And it'll look a whole lot more like some of the pictures that Andy shared with us than what it looks like now, which is pretty exciting. Another example was the village of Gowanda received $650,000 in Safe Routes to School funding. Now the Safe Routes to School funding has been discontinued. It's in that pot of transportation alternatives. But that was a case where they had been turned down for funding in the first round of applications. They worked very hard to be ready when that funding became available again, and they were successful to the tune of $650,000 to do sidewalk work, crosswalk work, and some educational and awareness activities are in that as well. And another example would be, well, I think Hamburg wasn't so much an example of, the state DOT was doing that project, but the village came on board and said, the state said, oh, we're going to come down and widen your main street, redo this or whatever, and correct me if I'm wrong here.
No, that's right.
But
it was a groundswell of just communities who came together and said, hey, wait, this is our street, we want it our way.
Yeah.
And they kind of worked with DOT and through a process got a lot of things that they liked out of it, and DOT agreed.
And a lot of private investment in that street too. If you've read, I left a New York Times article out there about that project. It was a painful process at the beginning from what I understand, not universal support, but there's been a tremendous amount of private economic activity since then. So I think that's
Yes, parts of the village have been magnificently redone because of that project.
So I think there's a lot to be said for planning. I agree. I think getting some copies of the comprehensive plan out so people can look at that draft and working on getting that adopted, because they don't really, funders are not going to so much go by, well, we had a comprehensive plan that we kind of worked on. They want the comprehensive plan that's been adopted to be adopted. It needs to go through a little bit of a process. It's called a seeker review. It's a state environmental quality review. It's a short, for planning, it's a short process. But you need to have those things done. I mean, you need to have those steps need to be in place, so.
So maybe I'm not understanding why we couldn't look at a complete streets ordinance first and separately. I understand a lot of work has gone into the comprehensive plan, and there's a lot of value in that, but I would hate to see us miss the first available funding opportunity because we were bogged down in a much larger, more complex agreement that needed to be come to. So is there any reason why a complete streets ordinance couldn't actually be broken out separately? Doesn't mean you can't feed into it from what we've already learned developing the comprehensive plan, but it seems like setting it free might be a nimbler, more sure approach.
Oh, I agree. And my interest is in seeing if the village is interested in getting that complete streets policy ordinance resolution, however you want to frame it, adopted before September of next year, which is when our funding ends. I'm available until that time to assist in any way that I can, whether it's talking with your village board members who aren't here this evening, with planning board, with other folks that might be interested, providing policy or ordinance examples of what other communities have done, providing some data about what has happened after complete streets have been adopted, that sort of thing. I'm available, like I said, until September of next year, and then I'm not. So. I guess that's my interest. And to answer your question, I mean, I agree. I think they interact. They'll be interacting, but they can be standalone projects.
Is it a village vote for this, or is it a board vote? If the board votes for it, then it can be passed? Is that right? It's our board.
Yep.
So would it make sense to get some sort of ad hoc committee together to start working on this?
That's a great idea. I like that idea. So yes, it would make sense. And we have, hopefully you left your contact information, and we can facilitate that. If you would like to set up another time to meet right now, you're welcome to do that. So, and I also asked if you filled in the sign-in sheet, kind of what your areas of interest are. And there might be, I know that there's some folks that aren't here tonight that are interested in doing some more of that kind of encouragement sort of education sort of activity. But I think a task force to start working on that, maybe, looking at sample policy, exploring it a little bit deeper together would be a very good thing. What do you say?
There have been a number, just to throw it out there, but there have been a number of planning meetings prior to the change that was made in downtown, or the business district at Hamburg. Going back about 10 years, there was a lot of interest in so it's kind of an evolutionary change into that. And then when the money came in, they really were, I think, quite ready, and they had quite good ideas about what they wanted to see happen.
Okay. Well, should we set another meeting date now, or maybe Jack meet with, are you interested in helping to get an ad hoc task force together?
I guess I should have given some thought before I brought this
I'd like to nominate
up.
Second, third?
I'm sure Mary, my wife, would love to spearhead this.
Okay, well, why don't maybe you and I talk, and then we'll get something out to the group. If you left your email information, we'll send it that way. If you left phone information, we'll give you a call and talk about some dates and get that moving. I'd like to see maybe a meeting before the second week of December. Does that sound reasonable? Okay. I think it's a good time to start moving things along. And I would just like to add my positive to the village, that I've spent a fair amount of time walking about here. I got a master's degree from SUNY on Fredonia as well, and because I had late class, I would sometimes just spend the night up here because I was student teaching at the time also. And you might ask why I was doing all this when I'm doing this now, but that's a whole nother story. I'll get Dr. Jabbat. But it's it's really a beautiful, beautiful village to walk in. And when I got out of the car today and looked around, and I thought, it's also, for such a dark, rainy night, it's really well lit in here. I would feel very comfortable walking almost anywhere in here, and frankly, I'm a little envious. I think we've got a really good thing going here, and it's just a matter of, just polishing the edges a little bit and moving forward. So, thank you all very much for coming.
Can I just make a comment? I had a meeting, and the comprehensive plan came up this Tuesday, so me being very new, I'm one of the newer ones on board as of just a few months. So I did track it down, and it is here in the building, and so I did request that at our next board meeting that gets brought up, because I agree with everyone here. I think we really need to get back on board with the comprehensive plan, see where we are so that we can move forward. So I just wanted to assure you that it is something that's going to be, we're looking into it.
And for the rest of you here, look at it when we get, I'm hoping we can get some draft copies available. Really look at it, because I know, speaking from the planning side, I'm working with a couple of local towns and villages on their comprehensive plans right now. It's almost heartbreaking to put a lot of work into a plan and then find people just not taking some of those pieces of this plan and running forward with it, because there's always a lot of work has gone into it. A lot of exciting possibilities are wrapped up into those plans. So I would encourage you to look at it and say, hey, is there a piece of this that I can take some ownership of, and that I might know other people in the community to help to move those things forward. So, thank you.